I walked into my childhood garage after 6 months serving NATO in Eastern Europe, exhausted but eager to see my 1967 Corvette Stingray. The space where my cherry red dream should have been sitting was empty except for old oil stains. My mother appeared behind me, arms crossed, wearing a satisfied smirk. She said casually that they sold my Corvette to fund my younger brother Danny's 3-week Mediterranean luxury cruise with his girlfriend. My hands trembled as the words sank in. 3 years of restoration work. $20,000. Gone. The fluorescent light in the garage buzzed overhead as I stood there, trying to make sense of what my mother had just told me. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing the disbelief that washed over me. I turned to face her, searching her expression for any sign that this was some kind of terrible joke. But Susan, my mother, just stood there with that same casual indifference, as if she had just told me she had rearranged the living room furniture instead of destroying something I had poured my soul into. I bought that wrecked Corvette when I was 19 years old with money I had saved from my first construction job. It was a disaster when I found it, rusted and broken in a barn outside of town. But I saw what it could become. For 3 years, I spent every spare moment in this garage, learning everything I could about restoration. I taught myself how to rebuild an engine, how to work with fiberglass, how to match paint to that perfect shade of cherry red. I watched hundreds of hours of videos, read every manual I could find, and slowly, piece by piece, brought that car back to life. It was not just a car. It represented everything I had worked for, every sacrifice I had made, every weekend I spent covered in grease instead of going out with friends. That Corvette was my pride, my proof that I could take something broken and make it beautiful again. It was my escape, my meditation, my dream made real. When I deployed to Eastern Europe 6 months ago, I left explicit instructions with my parents. I wrote them down, taped them to the garage wall. Do not touch. Do not move. Do not sell. The car was registered in my name, insured by me, and every penny that went into it came from my own pocket. I trusted them to simply leave it alone while I served my country overseas. Susan shifted her weight, her expression still maddeningly calm. She explained that Danny, my 24-year-old brother, needed money for what she called the trip of a lifetime with his girlfriend Amber. They were planning a 3-week Mediterranean cruise, complete with excursions and fine dining, and apparently they did not have the funds to make it happen. So my mother decided, without asking me, without even attempting to contact me, that my Corvette would solve their problem. You were away serving anyway, she said, waving her hand dismissively. You were not using it. And Danny deserves nice things too. He works so hard, and he needed this opportunity to relax and enjoy himself. The irony of her words hit me like a physical blow. Danny, who had never held a job for more than 3 months, who still lived at home rent-free at 24, who had never saved $1 in his life, worked hard. Meanwhile, I had been overseas, living in cramped quarters, doing my duty, serving in a NATO operation that took me away from everything familiar. But sure, Danny needed a luxury cruise. My father, Robert, appeared in the doorway of the garage, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on the concrete floor. He would not look at me. When I demanded to know how he could let this happen, he mumbled something about going along with it because Susan insisted. He said it like that absolved him of responsibility, like he was just an innocent bystander in the destruction of his son's property. I asked them how much they sold it for. Susan told me they got $18,000 from a collector 3 towns over. My stomach dropped. I had put at least $20,000 into that car, not counting the countless hours of labor. But more than that, I knew the market. A fully restored 1967 Corvette Stingray in the condition mine was in could easily fetch $35,000, maybe more to the right buyer. They had practically given it away. $18,000, I repeated, my voice hollow. You sold a $35,000 car for $18,000. Susan shrugged. We are not car experts, Greg. We took what seemed like a fair offer. Besides, you can always get another car. Danny needed this money now. This was a limited-time opportunity for the cruise. I stared at her, trying to comprehend the level of entitlement and disrespect behind her words. Always get another car, as if 3 years of my life, 3 years of learning and building and creating, could just be replaced like a pair of shoes, as if the memories embedded in every panel, every bolt, every carefully restored piece meant nothing. "Did you even try to contact me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Susan waved her hand again, that same dismissive gesture that made my blood boil. "You were busy with your military stuff. We did not want to bother you with family matters. Besides, we knew you would understand once you came home. Family helps family, Greg. That is what we do. Family helps family." The words echoed in my head, bitter and hollow. But apparently, that principle only applied when it benefited Danny. When I needed help, when I asked for support, I was told to be more independent, to figure things out on my own. But Danny, golden child Danny, could have anything he wanted, even if it meant stealing from his brother. I asked if they even told Danny where the money came from. Susan smiled, a proud, warm smile that made me feel sick. "Of course we did. He was so grateful. He said to tell you thank you, that he will bring you back a souvenir from Italy." A souvenir. My 3 years of work, my dream car, my $20,000, reduced to a cheap trinket from a gift shop. I felt something inside me crack, a foundation of trust and respect that I had not even realized was still there. But then Susan said something that made everything so much worse. She mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that they had also given Danny $12,000 from their savings as cruise spending money. My mind raced to do the math. $18,000 for the car, $12,000 in cash, $30,000 total. They had valued Danny's vacation, his leisure time with his girlfriend, at $30,000 while completely disregarding everything I had built. Danny was unemployed. He had been unemployed for the past 5 months, living at home, playing video games, and occasionally talking about job opportunities that never materialized. He had never held a position for more than 3 months in his entire adult life. He quit his last job at a retail store because he said the manager was too demanding when she asked him to show up on time. And yet, somehow, he deserved a $30,000 vacation funded by the destruction of my property and my parents' retirement savings. I looked at my father again, willing him to say something, anything, that would make this make sense. But Robert just stood there, a weak, defeated man who had abdicated all authority to his wife years ago. He cleared his throat and said quietly that maybe they should have discussed it with me first, but what was done, and perhaps we could all move forward and put this behind us. Move forward, put it behind us, as if the past 3 years of my life, as if my trust, as if my property rights, meant so little that they could be erased with a simple suggestion to forget about it. The garage suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. I needed to get out, to process what had happened, to figure out how my own parents could betray me so completely. But as I turned to leave, Susan said one more thing, her voice dripping with that same casual satisfaction. "Thanks to your car, your brother is living his best life." I walked out of the garage and into the backyard, needing air, needing space, needing anything other than the sight of that empty garage and my mother's smug expression. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my younger sister, Natalie. She was 26, 2 years younger than me, and the only person in this family who seemed to have any sense of right and wrong. "Greg, are you home?" Her text read. I just heard, "I am so sorry." I tried to stop them. 20 minutes later, Natalie pulled into the driveway in her sensible sedan, the one she paid for herself while working 2 jobs to get through graduate school. She found me sitting on the back porch steps, staring at nothing. She sat down beside me, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I told them not to touch your car," she finally said, her voice tight with anger. "I told Mom at least a dozen times. I even offered to store it at my apartment complex if they needed the garage space. But she would not listen. She had already made up her mind." "When did this happen?" I asked. "About 2 months ago. Danny came to them crying about how Amber really wanted to do this cruise, how all her friends were doing amazing trips with their boyfriends, and how he felt like a failure because he could not afford it. Mom immediately started talking about your car, saying it was just sitting there collecting dust, saying you would understand because you are the responsible one. The responsible one. I had heard that phrase my entire life. It was supposed to be a compliment, but it had always felt like a burden. an excuse for my parents to ignore my needs, while pouring everything into Danny. Greg is responsible. Greg can handle himself. Greg does not need our help. Meanwhile, Danny got endless chances, endless bailouts, endless excuses for his failures. Susan called us in for dinner. The idea of sitting at a table with my parents made my stomach turn. But Natalie squeezed my arm and said, "Come on, let them see your face. Let them sit with what they did." The dining room table was set like this was some kind of celebration. My mother had made pot roast, my supposed favorite, as if a home-cooked meal could somehow compensate for grand theft and betrayal. Robert sat at the head of the table, still avoiding eye contact. Susan bustled around, serving food, chattering about how nice it was to have me home, asking about my deployment as if we were having a normal family dinner. I could not eat. The food sat on my plate while my mother talked about the weather, about the neighbors, about everything except the elephant in the room. Natalie picked at her food, shooting me sympathetic glances. Finally, Susan's phone rang. Her face lit up. "Oh, it is Danny. He is calling from the ship. Let me put him on video so everyone can see." She propped her phone against a water pitcher, and suddenly Danny's tanned, carefree face filled the screen. He was wearing an expensive resort shirt, the kind with tropical patterns that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Behind him, I could see the gleaming deck of a cruise ship, ocean stretching to the horizon, other vacationers in designer swimwear lounging in the background. "What is up, family?" Danny's voice boomed through the speaker, slightly slurred. He had been drinking, clearly. "Just wanted to show you all how awesome this trip is. Check out this view." He flipped the camera around, showing us panoramic ocean views, then the interior of what looked like a luxury suite with a king bed, a sitting area, and a private balcony. He flipped the camera back to himself, grinning like he had won the lottery. "Danny, your brother is home," Susan said, her voice warm with pride. "Greg is sitting right here." Danny's eyes found me on his screen. "Oh, hey, bro. Thanks for the donation, man. This trip is incredible. You should see the restaurants on this thing. 5-star dining every night. And tomorrow we are doing a yacht excursion around the Greek islands. It is going to be insane." I felt Natalie's hand on my arm, a warning to stay calm. I took a breath and said, "Danny, that was not a donation. That was my car, my property, that I spent 3 years restoring. That Mom and Dad had no right to sell." Dana's smile faltered for just a second, then came back even brighter. "Dude, you were gone. Mom said you would not mind. Plus, you are making military money now, right? You can just buy another one when you get settled. Besides, it is just a car. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Just a car." The words hung in the air like poison. To him, it was just metal and paint. He had no concept of the work, the time, the passion, the late nights and bloody knuckles and small victories that went into that restoration. He could not understand because he had never built anything in his life, never created something from nothing, never worked for something beyond instant gratification. "You have got to be kidding me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You think because I was serving overseas that my property becomes community property? You think my 3 years of work is worth less than your vacation?" Danny rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes at me. "Come on, man, do not be dramatic. It is not that deep. Mom and Dad needed to clear out the garage anyway. And honestly, you were not even using it. What is the point of having a car you never drive?" Before I could respond, a female voice called from off-screen. "Babe, the cocktail hour is starting." Amber appeared in the frame, wearing a designer sundress and holding what looked like a very expensive drink. On her wrist was a gold bracelet that caught the light, clearly new and clearly expensive. "Oh, that is pretty," Susan cooed. "Where did you get that, Amber?" Amber giggled, holding up her wrist to show the camera. "Danny bought it for me at the ship's jewelry store." "Is it not gorgeous?" He said I deserved something special to remember this trip. I watched my mother's face absolutely beam with pride, as if Danny buying expensive jewelry with money stolen from me was somehow an achievement worth celebrating. My father said nothing, just pushed food around his plate. "You spent the spending money on jewelry?" I asked, incredulous. Danny shrugged, unbothered. "Some of it. We have been having a great time. Nice dinners, excursions, entertainment. That is what the money was for, right? To enjoy ourselves. $12,000 in cruise spending money. I wondered how much was left. I wondered if Danny had any concept of budgeting, of value, of the fact that his parents had just handed him what many Americans made in months of hard work, and he was burning through it on cocktails and trinkets. Well, we should get going, Danny said, waving at the camera. Just wanted to check in and show you all how great everything is. Thanks again, Greg. I owe you one, bro. The video call ended. The dining room fell into awkward silence. Susan turned to me with that same satisfied expression and said the words that would echo in my head for weeks. See? Thanks to your car. Your brother is living his best life. I laughed. I could not help it. The absurdity of it all. The complete lack of self-awareness. The audacity of her saying those words like they were something to be proud of. My laugh was cold, bitter, not remotely amused. Susan's expression shifted, confusion and irritation crossing her face. What is so funny? I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. What is funny is that you actually think this is okay. What is funny is that you are proud of enabling a 24-year-old unemployed man to blow through $30,000 on a cruise while his brother was overseas serving his country. What is funny is that you think a pot roast makes this better. Greg, my father started, his voice weak. No. I cut him off. You do not get to talk. You let this happen. You could have stopped it. You could have called me, sent me an email, anything, but you did not, because you have never been able to stand up to her, and you have never been able to admit that Danny is your favorite. That is not true, Susan protested, her voice rising. We love both of you equally. Natalie stood up, her own anger finally breaking through. That is complete garbage, Mom, and you know it. When Greg needed $5,000 for advanced training that would have helped his military career, you said you could not afford it. When I needed help with graduate school tuition, you told me to take out loans. But Danny gets $30,000 for a vacation. How is that equal? Susan's face flushed red. Danny needs our support. He is going through a difficult time. He needs to know we believe in him. He is 24 years old and unemployed, I said, my voice hard. You are not supporting him. You are enabling him. You are teaching him that he does not have to work, does not have to try, does not have to face consequences, because Mommy and Daddy will always bail him out. The argument continued, voices rising, years of resentment spilling out across the dinner table. But I could see it in my mother's eyes. She did not understand. She genuinely believed she was doing the right thing, that helping Danny was what good parents did. She could not see the damage, the inequality, the betrayal. Finally, I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. Natalie followed me out. Where are you going? Susan called after me. Anywhere but here. I called back and walked out into the night. I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town, unable to stomach the idea of sleeping under my parents' roof. Once I was in the room, I sat on the edge of the scratchy bedspread and called Marcus, my best friend from high school and the guy who had helped me work on the Corvette before I deployed. Tell me you are joking, Marcus said after I explained everything. His voice was tight with anger. Please tell me this is some kind of sick joke. I wish it was. Greg, that is theft. That is actual theft. The car was in your name, registered to you. They had no legal right to sell it. You need to call the cops, call a lawyer, do something. I had been thinking about that all evening. The problem was that the car had been stored in their garage on their property. From a legal standpoint, the situation was murky. They were my parents. I was their son, and family law was complicated. A lawyer would cost money, and even if I won, what would I actually win? The car was gone. I could maybe get the money back, but I would destroy whatever was left of my family relationships in the process. I do not know what to do, I admitted, the exhaustion of the day hitting me all at once. You know what you do? You make them face consequences. You do not let them pretend this is okay. Your mom is sitting there acting like she did you a favor. That is insane. We talked for another hour, Marcus getting progressively angrier on my behalf, throwing out ideas ranging from small claims court to public shaming on social media. Finally, I told him I needed to sleep, needed to think, needed to figure out my next move. I had just hung up when there was a knock at my motel room door. I opened it to find Natalie standing there, holding her laptop bag. "How did you find me?" I asked. "There are only 3 motels in this town, and I know you would pick the cheapest one," she said, pushing past me into the room. "We need to talk." She sat down at the small table, opened her laptop, and pulled up a folder full of files. "I have been keeping track," she said quietly, "of everything, because I knew this was going to explode eventually, and I wanted to have proof." "Proof of what?" She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen were bank statements, photographs of documents, screenshots of text messages, proof of the systematic favoritism, proof of the financial abuse, proof that this is not just about your car. I sat down across from her, and she walked me through 5 years of documented inequality. The bank statements showed regular large transfers to Danny, thousands of dollars at a time, marked as gifts or loans that were never repaid. She had spreadsheets showing that over the past 5 years, my parents had given Danny over $60,000 total for various opportunities that all went nowhere. A food truck business that never opened. A friend's startup that folded in 3 months. Rent for an apartment he lived in for 2 months before moving back home. A used car that he crashed within 6 months. $60,000. And Danny had nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, when I needed $5,000 for an advanced technical training program that would have qualified me for higher-level military positions with better pay, they told me they were watching their budget and could not afford to help. When Natalie needed help with graduate school tuition, they told her that education was an investment in herself and she should be willing to take out loans. "I photographed these from Dad's computer when they were out one day," Natalie said. "I know it is kind of a violation, but I had a feeling I would need evidence someday." She showed me text messages she had saved, conversations between our parents and relatives where Susan repeatedly said that I did not need help because I was in the military and had benefits. While Danny was struggling and needed their support, she showed me emails where Robert expressed concerns about how much they were spending on Danny, only to have Susan shut him down and insist they were doing the right thing. The pattern was undeniable. Every time Danny faced a consequence, our parents swooped in to save him. Every time he made a mistake, they made excuses. And every time I or Natalie achieved something through our own hard work, it was treated as evidence that we did not need their support. Then Natalie pulled up something that made my blood run cold. "There is more. I found this a few months ago, but I did not know if I should tell you." She opened a file containing photographs of text messages between my mother and her sister, my Aunt Carol. In the messages, Susan discussed selling my car, talking about it like it was a foregone conclusion, saying that I would never know until it was too late, and that even if I was upset, I would get over it eventually because I was the reasonable one who always understood. The messages were dated 4 months before the car was actually sold. This was not an impulsive decision made in a moment of desperation for Danny. This was premeditated. Susan had been planning this for months, just waiting for the right moment when I would be far enough away that I could not stop her. I felt sick. The betrayal was so much deeper than I had realized. This was not just favoritism or misguided parenting. This was calculated, deliberate, and cruel. "There is one more thing," Natalie said hesitantly, "and this one is going to really hurt." She pulled up a file containing an old text message thread between her and our father from about 2 months ago. In it, Robert told Natalie that he felt terrible about selling my car, that he knew it was wrong, that Susan had pressured him into it, and that he did not know how to stop her. He asked Natalie not to tell me because he was ashamed. Then she opened an audio file. "This was left on your voicemail while you were deployed. It probably did not download until you got back to U.S. cell service. Did you check your voicemail yet?" I had not. I had been too shocked by everything to think about checking messages. She pressed play. My father's voice came through the speaker, slurred and emotional. He was drunk. "Greg, son, I need to tell you something. Your mother and I sold your car. I know we should not have. Danny needed the money, and Susan insisted. And I just went along with it because I always go along with it. But it was wrong. It was so wrong." There was a long pause, the sound of ice clinking in a glass. "The thing is, Danny crashed his own car a few weeks ago. 3rd accident in 2 years. He was drunk, Greg. He lost his license. He has got legal troubles now. The cruise money. It was not just for a vacation. Susan wanted to give him something positive to focus on while he deals with all that. She made me promise not to tell you the truth. She said you would not understand. That you would judge Danny. Another pause, longer this time. I am sorry, son. I am a coward. I let her sell your car to fix Danny's mistakes. And I did not stop it. I did not even try. I am your father, and I failed you. I just wanted you to know that I know what we did was wrong. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not deserve it. The voicemail ended. The motel room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning unit. Danny had been drunk driving. Again, he had crashed his car, lost his license, was facing legal consequences, and instead of letting him face those consequences, instead of using that moment as a wake-up call, my parents had sold my car to fund a luxury vacation to make him feel better about his own irresponsibility. The $30,000 was not a gift. It was a bribe, an enablement, a way to avoid the hard conversation about how Danny was spiraling out of control. And my Corvette, my 3 years of work, my dreams, had been sacrificed to maintain the illusion that everything was fine. I looked at Natalie, and I saw my own pain reflected in her eyes. What do we do? I asked. We stop letting them get away with it, she said. We stop pretending this is normal. We stop protecting Danny from reality. And we make them see what they have done to this family. I barely slept that night. By the time the sun came up, I had made my decision. I checked out of the motel, and Natalie and I drove to my parents' house together. We arrived at 7 in the morning, early enough that we knew they would be home, late enough that they would be awake. My mother answered the door in her bathrobe, surprise and irritation crossing her face. Greg, you could have called. We are not even dressed yet. We need to talk. Now. All of us. My voice left no room for argument. 5 minutes later, we were all gathered in the living room. Robert sat in his recliner, looking like he wanted to disappear. Susan perched on the edge of the couch, her arms crossed defensively. Natalie and I stood, neither of us willing to sit down and pretend this was a casual conversation. I pulled out my phone and without preamble, played the voicemail from my father. Robert's face went pale as his own drunken confession filled the room. Susan's expression shifted from confusion to shock to anger. When the voicemail ended, the silence was deafening. You had no right to listen to that, Susan finally said, her voice tight. I had every right. I shot back. It was left on my phone, and I am glad I listened to it, because now I know the truth. Danny was not just going through a difficult time. He was drunk driving. Again, he crashed his car, his third accident, and lost his license. And instead of letting him face the consequences of his actions, you sold my car to fund a vacation to cheer him up. Robert would not look at me. His hands gripped the arms of his recliner, knuckles white. Danny needed support during a hard time, Susan said, but her voice lacked conviction. Danny needed consequences. I said, Danny needed to hit rock bottom. Danny needed to learn that his actions have results. But you could not let that happen, could you? Because then you would have to admit that your golden child is a mess and that you created him. Natalie stepped forward, pulling up files on her laptop. Do you want to know what else we know? We know that you have given Danny over $60,000 in the past 5 years. We know that you planned to sell Greg's car for months before you actually did it. We know that you lied about the sale price. Susan's face went red. How dare you go through our private documents? How dare you steal from your son? Natalie shot back. Do you want to talk about private? Do you want to talk about boundaries? Let me tell you about boundaries. When Greg needed $5,000 for career advancement, you said no. When I needed help with graduate school, you said no. But Danny gets $60,000 for failed business ideas, crashed cars, and drunk driving legal fees. How is that fair? Life is not always fair, Susan said, her voice rising. Danny needs more help. He is struggling. He is sensitive. He needs our support. He is 24 years old. I said, my voice cold. He is not a child. And you are not helping him. You are destroying him. You have taught him that he does not have to work, does not have to try, does not have to face reality, because you will always bail him out. You have created a person who thinks it is okay to steal from his brother, who thinks $30,000 is owed to him, who thinks drunk driving is no big deal because mom and dad will fix it. You do not understand, Susan said, and I could hear the desperation in her voice now. You have always been independent. You have always been fine on your own. Danny needs guidance. He needs support. He needs to know we believe in him. What I needed was parents who treated their children equally, I said, and my voice broke just slightly. What I needed was for you to respect my property, my work, my sacrifices. What I needed was for you to see me as more than just the responsible one who does not need anything. But you could not do that, could you? Because Dan's needs always come first. Susan stood up, her face twisted with anger and hurt. Maybe if you were around more instead of playing soldier, you would understand what it is like to watch your child struggle. You would understand what it means to make sacrifices for family. The words hit me like a slap. Playing soldier. She had just reduced my military service, my deployment, my contribution to NATO operations, to playing, as if I had been on some extended vacation instead of serving my country. I was not playing, I said quietly, and the room seemed to hold its breath. I was serving. I was doing something meaningful with my life, and I was planning to come home and spend time with you between assignments. I have been offered an advanced posting in Germany, a real career opportunity, and I was going to turn it down so I could be closer to family. But now I am reconsidering everything about my relationship with you. Robert finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Son, we were wrong. I know we were wrong. I should have stopped it. I should have called you. I should have stood up to your mother. I am sorry. Sorry does not bring back my car, I said. Sorry does not erase 3 years of my life. Sorry does not fix the fact that you lied to me about the sale price. You told me $18,000, but you actually got $28,000, did you not? Where did that extra $10,000 go? Robert's face answered the question before his mouth could. The money had been added to Dana's spending fund. $30,000 had actually been closer to $40,000 when you added in the hidden $10,000. Unbelievable, Natalie whispered. Susan was crying now, but they were angry tears, not remorseful ones. You are being so selfish, Greg. You are making this all about you and a stupid car when your brother needed help. My brother needed consequences, I said, and I needed a family that respected me. We both needed parents who could see past their own enabling and favoritism. But we did not get that, did we? The front door suddenly burst open, and Danny walked in, clearly having just woken up. He was wearing rumpled clothes, his hair a mess, and he looked confused by the scene in front of him. What is going on? He asked, looking around at all of us. Why is everyone yelling? I just got back last night and I am still jet-lagged. You have been back for 2 days, Natalie said coldly. Where have you been? Danny shrugged. Stayed at a hotel for a couple nights to extend the vacation vibe. Why is everyone looking at me like that? You stayed at a hotel, I asked slowly. With what money? The last of the cruise money. And before you start, I deserve a soft landing after 3 weeks of travel. It is exhausting. 3 weeks of luxury travel that I paid for, and he needed a soft landing. I would have laughed if I was not so angry. Then I noticed what was parked in the driveway, visible through the front window. A brand new sports car, something sleek and expensive and completely impractical. Danny, what is that in the driveway? He perked up, suddenly excited. Oh, you like it? I just leased it yesterday. It is a beauty, right? Fully loaded. It has got this incredible sound system and heated seats and... You leased a car. Robert stood up, his face shocked. You do not have a license. You do not have a job. How did you even lease a car? Danny waved his hand dismissively. The dealer worked with me. I put down the last of the cruise money as a deposit, and I may have used your name as a co-signer, Dad. They needed proof of income, so I just forged your signature on the application. No big deal. You do not even have to worry about it. The payments are only $900 a month. The room erupted. Robert was shouting, demanding to know how Danny could forge his signature. Susan was trying to calm everyone down while simultaneously defending Danny. saying he probably did not understand what he was doing. Natalie was on her phone, probably looking up the legal ramifications of forging documents, and Danny just stood there, looking annoyed that we were all overreacting. "Relax," he said. "Greg is smart. He will figure out how to help with the payments once he settles in from his deployment. It is not that much money. $900 a month is what, $30 a day? That is nothing." The audacity of his statement hung in the air. He had stolen my car, spent the money on a luxury vacation, forged our father's signature to lease a car he could not afford and was not legally allowed to drive, and now he expected me to pay for it. I looked at my mother, who was still trying to defend him, still trying to explain away his behavior. I looked at my father, who had enabled this for years. I looked at Danny, who genuinely could not understand why everyone was upset. And I made my decision. I walked out of that house without another word. Natalie followed me, and we sat in her car for a long moment, both of us processing what had just happened. "He forged Dad's signature," Natalie said, her voice hollow. "He committed fraud, and he expects you to pay for it." "I know. What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath. "I am going to fix this. All of it, but I need to be smart about it." First stop was the house of Harold Benson, the collector who had bought my Corvette. I had found his information through the title transfer records at the DMV. Harold lived in a nice neighborhood about 30 miles away, and when I knocked on his door, a kind-faced man in his early 60s answered. "Can I help you?" he asked. "My name is Greg. I believe you bought a 1967 Corvette Stingray from my parents a couple months ago." Recognition flashed across his face. "Ah, yes. I wondered if I might be hearing from you. Come in." Harold led me through his house to a pristine garage that looked more like a showroom. And there, in the center, was my Corvette. She looked exactly as I had left her. Cherry red and beautiful. Harold had clearly taken good care of her. "She is a beauty," Harold said, running his hand along the hood. "Best purchase I have made in years. But I have to tell you, son, something felt off about that sale from the beginning. Your parents seemed too eager to get rid of her, and they did not know the first thing about the car. When I asked about the restoration work, they could not answer basic questions. They sold it without my knowledge or permission," I said, "while I was deployed overseas." Harold sighed deeply. "I had a feeling it was something like that. I am sorry. If I had known for certain, I would not have gone through with the purchase." We talked for over an hour. Harold showed me all the documentation from the sale. He had paid $28,000, not $18,000 like my parents claimed. He showed me the title work, which was not yet registered because he was waiting on some paperwork. I explained that during my deployment, I had not just been serving in a standard military role. I had been using my off hours to build a specialized security consulting business, advising contractors and companies operating in international zones. It had started as a side project, a way to use my expertise and military knowledge to help businesses navigate complex security situations. The business had grown faster than I expected. I had been saving aggressively, investing wisely, and now I had about $45,000 in accessible savings, plus the business was generating steady income. "Wait," Marcus said, "you have been running a successful business and never mentioned it." I did not want family knowing about the money, I admitted. I grew up watching my parents ask me to be responsible while throwing money at Danny. I did not want them to see me as another ATM. I wanted to build something for myself, quietly, without interference. Natalie shook her head in disbelief. "You have been financially successful this whole time, and they have been treating you like you needed their help. They never asked. They assumed military pay was all I had, and I let them assume. Now I realize my silence enabled their disrespect. I told them about a major contract I had just been offered, a 6-month consulting gig that would bring in another $60,000 if I took it. My business was not just a side project anymore. It was becoming a real career. "So you can buy the car back," Marcus said. "I can do more than that. I can fix this whole situation, but I need your help." Over the next 2 hours, we formed a plan. Natalie would continue documenting everything, building a paper trail of the financial abuse and favoritism. Marcus would help me contact the right people about Danny's fraud, and I would handle the legal aspects, which led me to my next stop, A lawyer's office. Attorney Jennifer Walsh, specialized in family law and estate planning. I explained my situation, showed her the documentation Natalie had gathered, and asked about my options. She reviewed everything carefully, asked detailed questions, and then pulled up some property records on her computer. "This is interesting," she said, turning her screen toward me. "Are you aware that your parents' house is not fully in their names?" I was not. She explained that when my grandfather died 8 years ago, he had left the house in a specific kind of trust. My grandparents had owned the house outright, and when Grandma died, Grandpa lived there for another decade. When he passed, the house was supposed to go to my parents with certain conditions attached. The trust document was complex, but the relevant clause was clear. The house would remain with Robert and Susan for their lifetime, but if they ever demonstrated financial irresponsibility or favoritism that materially harmed any grandchild, the trustee could transfer ownership to the grandchildren instead. The trustee was Thomas Brennan, a family attorney who had handled my grandfather's estate. He was still practicing, still overseeing the trust, and according to Jennifer, he took his duties seriously. "Your grandfather put this clause in for a reason," Jennifer said. "He must have seen something in your parents' behavior that concerned him. If you can document systematic financial favoritism and harm to you as a grandchild, you have grounds to petition for a trust review." The house was worth approximately $450,000. It was not just about the money or the property. It was about leverage, about having something that would make my parents finally take me seriously, finally understand that their actions had consequences. "What do I need to do?" I asked. Jennifer outlined the process. We would need to compile all documentation, present it to Thomas Brennan along with a formal petition, and request a trust review. If Brennan agreed that the conditions had been met, he had the authority to transfer the house to me and Natalie as joint owners. My parents would not be thrown out on the street, but they would no longer own the home they lived in. It felt nuclear. It felt extreme. But as I sat in that lawyer's office, I realized something. This was not about revenge. This was about forcing change, about creating consequences significant enough that my parents could not ignore them or explain them away. This was about protecting myself and Natalie from future abuse. And yes, maybe it was about teaching Danny that the world did not revolve around him. "Let me think about this," I said. "I need to be sure before I go down this road." Jennifer nodded. "Take your time. But Greg, from what you have told me and what I see in these documents, you have been mistreated. You have every right to protect yourself." I left her office with my head spinning. The power had shifted. I was not the helpless son begging for respect anymore. I was a veteran with resources, with knowledge, with legal options. My parents had underestimated me, had treated me like I was still the dependent child who needed their approval. They were about to learn otherwise. I spent the next 3 days preparing. Natalie and I met with Thomas Brennan, the trust attorney, and presented our documentation. He listened carefully, asked probing questions, and reviewed every piece of evidence we had compiled. His expression grew increasingly troubled as he saw the pattern of financial favoritism and the specific harm done to me through the sale of my car. "Your grandfather included this clause because he worried about your parents' judgment," Thomas said finally. He never explicitly said why, but now I understand. He saw the favoritism, even back then. He wanted to protect you and your sister. Thomas agreed that we had grounds for a trust review. He would need a few days to complete his own investigation, but based on what he had seen, he believed the conditions for transfer had been met. He advised me to present my parents with a choice: accept my terms for family rehabilitation, or face the trust transfer. "Give them a chance to make this right," Thomas said. "That is what your grandfather would have wanted." I called another family meeting. This time, I was in control. I told my parents we were meeting at the house at 6 in the evening on Saturday, and that attendance was not optional. Danny would be there too. Everyone was going to hear what I had to say. Saturday evening came. The family gathered in the living room, the same room where we had fought days earlier. This time, I stood while everyone else sat. Natalie stood beside me, a united front. "I want to start by saying something I should have said a long time ago," I began, my voice calm and measured. "Thank you all for teaching me an important lesson about family. You taught me that blood does not automatically mean respect, that being a parent does not automatically mean wisdom, and that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect your dreams are the ones you need to protect them from. Susan started to interrupt, but I held up my hand. You are going to listen. For once, you are going to sit there and hear what I have to say, and you are going to take me seriously. I told them about buying my Corvette back from Harold. I explained that I had paid cash, that I had the resources to do so, that I had been building a successful business they knew nothing about because I did not trust them with that information. Susan's expression shifted from defensive to calculating. I could see the wheels turning, see her preparing to ask me for help with Danny's car payments or some other crisis. I cut that off immediately. Do not even think about asking me for money. I did not tell you this so you could see me as a new funding source. I told you so you would understand that you have underestimated me, disrespected me, and misjudged me for the last time. I pulled out a folder containing all the documentation Natalie and I had compiled. I showed them the bank statements proving $60,000 in gifts to Danny. I showed them the evidence that they had lied about the sale price of my car, pocketing $10,000. I showed them proof of the systematic favoritism, the denied help to me and Natalie while Danny got whatever he wanted. This is not about one car, I said. This is about a pattern of behavior that has damaged this family and destroyed my trust in you as parents. Then I told them about the trust, about grandfather's clause, about my meeting with Thomas Brennan. I watched the color drain from their faces as they realized what I was saying. Here are your options, I said, my voice steady. Option 1. You agree to my terms. You will immediately establish a written agreement that you will provide no further financial support to Danny beyond basic parental obligations. No more bailouts. No more opportunities. No more enabling. You will reimburse me the $10,000 you pocketed from my car sale. You will attend family therapy, all of us together, to address the favoritism and dysfunction in this family. Danny will get a job within 60 days and maintain it, or his leased car gets returned. You will all work on becoming a healthier family. I paused, letting that sink in. Option 2. I proceed with the trust transfer. Natalie and I become the legal owners of this house. You will not be evicted, but you will be living in our property. You will pay us rent at market rate, which will be approximately $2,000 a month. Every decision about this house will go through us. You will be our tenants. The silence in the room was absolute. You cannot do this, Susan finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. I can. Thomas Brennan has confirmed it. The documentation is solid. The trust clause is enforceable. Grandfather saw this coming, and he protected us. Danny, who had been scrolling on his phone, suddenly looked up. His face was red with anger. This is garbage. You are just jealous that Mom and Dad love me more. You have always been jealous. You are bitter and petty and... He stood up and moved toward me, his fist clenched. I do not think he actually intended to hit me, but the aggressive movement was enough. Years of military training kicked in. I caught his arm, deflected his momentum, and had him in a controlled hold before he even realized what happened. I did not hurt him, but I made it very clear that he was not in control. Sit down, Danny, I said quietly. You are going to listen for once in your life. I released him, and he stumbled back to the couch, shocked. No one had ever physically stopped him before, never made him face any kind of physical consequence for his aggression. And then something unexpected happened. My father stood up. Robert, who had been a passive enabler for years, who had never challenged Susan, who had let this family deteriorate, finally found his voice. Your brother is right, Robert said, and his voice was shaking but firm. We have ruined you, Danny. I have watched you become someone I do not recognize, and it is our fault. We never made you face consequences. We never taught you responsibility. We turned you into a man who thinks he can forge signatures, steal from his brother, and expect everyone to clean up his messes. He turned to Susan. And you have enabled this because you cannot stand to see him uncomfortable for even a moment. You love him so much that you have destroyed him. You have turned him into someone who will never be able to function in the real world because he has never had to. Susan looked like she had been slapped. Robert, how can you say that? Because it is true. And I am done. I am done watching you prioritize Danny's comfort over everyone else's well-being. I am done being a coward who lets you make all the decisions. I am done pretending this is normal." His voice grew stronger with each word. "We are accepting Greg's terms. All of them. We are going to fix this family, or we are going to lose it entirely. And if you cannot accept that, Susan, then I am leaving. I will walk out that door right now. Choose." The room held its breath. Susan looked at her husband, at her children, at the folder of evidence that documented her failures. I saw something break in her expression, some wall of denial finally crumbling. "I was trying to help him," she whispered. "I was just trying to help." "You were trying to make yourself feel like a good mother," Natalie said, her voice not unkind but firm. "But being a good mother is not about protecting your child from every consequence. It is about teaching them to be a good person. And you failed at that." Robert sat back down and took Susan's hand. "We failed, both of us. But we can fix this if we try, if we actually put in the work." I looked at Danny, who was still sitting on the couch, his face pale. "Danny, this is not about punishing you. This is about saving you from yourself. You are 24 years old with no job, no license, no prospects, and a mountain of debt you cannot pay. If this continues, you will be 40 years old, still living here, still expecting handouts, still blaming everyone else for your problems. Is that what you want?" For the first time, I saw something like fear in Dana's eyes. Not anger, not entitlement, but genuine fear. Maybe he was finally starting to understand what his life would look like if nothing changed. "I will try," he said quietly. "I will get a job. I will try to do better." It was not an apology. It was not redemption. But it was a start. Susan looked at me, and I saw tears running down her face. "I am sorry, Greg. I am so sorry. I did not see what I was doing. I thought I was helping. I thought you did not need me because you were always so capable. But that was just an excuse, was it not? I took you for granted." "Yes," I said simply. "You did. Will you forgive me?" I thought about that question for a long moment. I do not know yet, but I am willing to try family therapy. I am willing to see if we can build something healthier. That is all I can promise right now. Robert stood up again and extended his hand. "We accept your terms. All of them. We will sign whatever needs to be signed. We will go to therapy. We will make this right." I shook his hand. It did not fix everything, but it was something. 3 months passed. 3 months of hard work, uncomfortable conversations, and slow, painful progress. My parents accepted my terms and signed a formal agreement. They repaid the $10,000 they had pocketed from the car sale. Money I used to upgrade the storage facility, where I now kept my Corvette in a climate-controlled private garage. They attended family therapy sessions. And while the first few were awkward and difficult, we slowly began to address the patterns that had poisoned our family for years. Susan struggled the most. Admitting that her love for Danny had actually harmed him went against everything she believed about herself as a mother. But our therapist, Dr. Martinez, was patient and skilled. She helped Susan see that real love sometimes means stepping back, that enabling is not the same as supporting, that protecting someone from consequences is not protection at all. Robert surprised me. Once he found his voice, he started using it. He took over managing the family finances jointly with Susan, implementing oversight and budgets. He started saying no to Dana's requests for money. He started attending a support group for parents of adult children, learning how to set boundaries while still offering love. Danny got a job. Through Marcus, who knew someone in logistics, Danny started working at a warehouse. The work was physical, demanding, and nothing like the easy opportunities he had always imagined for himself. He hated it at first. He complained constantly, but he stuck with it. 90 days turned into 100. The warehouse supervisor told Marcus that Danny was not a great employee yet, but he showed up on time and was starting to learn. Danny returned the leased sports car. It hurt his pride. But the reality of $900 monthly payments with no way to cover them finally sank in. He bought a used sedan with money he earned himself, a reliable car that was not flashy but got him to work and back. It was not much, but it was his. One evening, about 2 months in, Danny came to my apartment. I almost did not let him in, but he stood on my doorstep looking uncomfortable and asked if we could talk. We sat on my balcony, and he said the words I never expected to hear. "I am sorry. For the car. For everything. I did not understand what it meant to you. I did not understand a lot of things. I thought the world owed me something just for existing. I was wrong. It was not a perfect apology. It was awkward and clearly uncomfortable for him, but it was genuine." For the first time in his life, Danny was facing himself honestly. "Thank you," I said. "I know that was not easy to say. Working in a warehouse is not easy either," he said with a weak smile. But Marcus was right. I needed to do something hard. I needed to earn something instead of just taking. We did not become best friends overnight. Years of resentment do not disappear with one conversation, but it was a foundation, a place to start rebuilding from. Natalie and I grew closer through all of this. She had always been my ally, but working together to save our family created a bond that went deeper. She finished her graduate program, got a job she loved, and started paying down her student loans with a plan that did not include asking our parents for help. She told me once that watching me stand up to our parents gave her permission to set her own boundaries. I bought my Corvette back from Harold at cost. The day I picked her up, Harold and I spent an hour talking about cars, about restoration, about the satisfaction of building something with your own hands. He became a mentor of sorts, teaching me about the collector car market, introducing me to other enthusiasts. The Corvette community welcomed me, and I found a group of people who understood the passion and dedication that went into restoration work. I took the Germany posting I had been offered. My security consulting business continued to grow, and I hired 2 employees to handle operations while I was overseas. The business was generating enough income that I could be selective about military assignments, choosing positions that advanced my career while still allowing me to build my company. Through Marcus, I met Claire. She was a 3rd-grade teacher with a sharp wit and an even sharper understanding of boundaries. When I told her about my family situation, she did not judge or offer platitudes. She just listened and then said, "Good for you for standing up for yourself. A lot of people never learn to do that." We started dating slowly, both of us cautious but hopeful. She understood my military commitments and respected my need for independence. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building a relationship on healthy ground. The family therapy sessions continued. Some weeks were harder than others. There were setbacks, moments when old patterns tried to resurface, times when Susan slipped back into making excuses for Danny, or when Robert remained passive. But Dr. Martinez kept us accountable, kept pushing us toward honesty and change. One session about 2 months in, Dr. Martinez asked each of us to talk about what we had learned. When it was my turn, I said, "I learned that family does not mean accepting mistreatment. I learned that love without boundaries is not really love. It is enabling. I learned that I have worth beyond what I can provide for other people. And I learned that sometimes you have to be willing to lose a relationship to save it." The family dynamics were not perfect, and probably never would be. But they were honest now. They were real. We were building something new on the ruins of what had been broken. I took my Corvette out every weekend I was home. I would drive through the countryside with the windows down, the engine rumbling beneath me, the sun warm on my face. That car represented more than transportation or even nostalgia. It represented the fact that I had built something beautiful, something valuable, and I had fought to keep it. It represented my refusal to let anyone diminish my worth or steal my dreams. One Saturday afternoon, I was working on the car in my private garage when my phone rang. It was my father. "Greg, I wanted to let you know that Danny got promoted at the warehouse. Not much, just a lead position with a small raise, but he earned it, and he was proud. I have never seen him proud of himself before." I could hear the emotion in Robert's voice. "That is good, Dad. Really good. I know we have a long way to go," Robert continued. "I know I failed you for a long time, but I want you to know, I see it now. I see what we did to you, to Natalie, to Danny, and I am trying to do better. I know you are. I see it too." After we hung up, I stood in my garage and looked at my Corvette. The restoration had taught me patience, precision, and the value of doing something right even when it was hard. Rebuilding my family was not so different. It required the same patience, the same commitment to doing the work, even when it was difficult and frustrating. Not everything could be restored. Some damage was permanent, but that did not mean you could not build something new and worthwhile from what remained. I learned that setting boundaries does not make you selfish. It makes you healthy. I learned that you can love your family and still demand that they treat you with respect. I learned that real family rises to meet that standard. And if they will not, then the relationship was never what you thought it was. Most importantly, I learned that your worth is not determined by other people's recognition of it. I built something beautiful with that Corvette. I built something meaningful with my military service and my business. Those things had value regardless of whether my parents acknowledged them. And I had value as a person regardless of whether they saw it. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect your dreams are the ones you need to protect them from. And that is okay. That is not a failure on your part. It is just reality. And once you accept that reality, once you stop waiting for them to become who you need them to be, you can start building the life you actually want. I drove my Corvette down an empty highway as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The engine purred beneath me, responsive and powerful, a machine I had brought back to life through determination and skill. I felt at peace in a way I had not felt in years. My parents had tried to take this from me. They had tried to sacrifice my dreams for my brother's comfort, but I fought back, not with anger or revenge, but with boundaries and consequences and a refusal to accept less than I deserved. And I won, not because they finally understood, though that helped, not because the family was fixed, though it was healing. I won because I reclaimed my self-respect, rebuilt my trust in my own judgment, and refused to let anyone make me feel small ever again. That Corvette was not just a car. It was proof that I could take something broken and make it whole. And in fighting to get it back, I had done the same thing for myself. If you are facing a situation where family expects you to sacrifice your dreams for their comfort, let me ask you something. At what point do you draw the line? When do you decide that love has to include respect, that family has to mean equality, that supporting someone does not mean enabling their worst behaviors? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself and finding your strength. Share this story with someone who might need to hear it, someone who is struggling to set boundaries with family members who do not respect them. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you are worth standing up for, that your dreams matter, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve. Take care of yourselves, protect what matters to you, and never let anyone convince you that defending your worth makes you selfish. Until next time.